The dust hadn't settled on Margaret's grave when Samuel Xavier realized he had no idea how to braid a 6-year-old girl's hair. His sister had been dead 3 weeks, taken by fever so sudden and fierce that the doctor barely had time to shake his head before she was gone. Her husband had died 2 years prior in a ranch accident, and now little Emma was Samuel's responsibility. The girl sat on the porch of his ranch house just outside Calico, California, in the spring of 1878, her blonde hair tangled and wild, her dress buttoned wrong, and her eyes still carrying that hollow look of loss that made Samuel's chest ache. "Uncle Samuel, the other children say I look like a tumbleweed," Emma said quietly, picking at the hem of her dress. Samuel knelt down in front of her, his weathered hands hanging uselessly at his sides. At 32, he had built a successful cattle ranch through sheer determination and backbreaking work. He could rope a steer, break a horse, and negotiate prices with the toughest buyers from San Francisco. But a little girl's hair defeated him entirely. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I don't rightly know how to fix it proper," he admitted, his voice rough with frustration at his own inadequacy. Emma nodded, not crying, just accepting this as another loss in her young life. That acceptance somehow hurt worse than tears would have. "Maybe I could cut it short, like the boys wear," Samuel suggested, though he knew even as he said it that this wasn't the answer. "Mama said a lady should have long hair," Emma whispered. "She said she'd teach me to braid it myself when I got bigger." Samuel felt something crack inside his chest. He cleared his throat and stood, looking out across his land. 2,000 acres of California grassland, a herd of 500 cattle, a solid house he'd built with his own hands, and 3 reliable ranch hands who worked the property. He had everything a man could want except the knowledge of how to raise a little girl who had lost everything. "You're going to school today," he said, making a decision. "The teacher there, she'll know what to do." The schoolhouse sat at the edge of Calico, a whitewashed building that looked almost cheerful in the morning sun. Samuel had never had much occasion to visit it before. His own education had been rough and practical, learned from his father between long days of work. He could read and cipher well enough for business, and that had always seemed sufficient. He led Emma inside, his hat in his hands, feeling oversized and clumsy in the neat, organized space. Desks sat in careful rows, a blackboard dominated one wall, and books lined a shelf with precise order. The smell of chalk and paper filled the air. A woman stood at the front of the room, writing something on the blackboard. She turned when she heard them enter, and Samuel found himself staring. She was perhaps 25, with auburn hair pulled back in an intricate style that looked both practical and elegant. Her green eyes were sharp and intelligent, and she wore a simple blue dress that somehow managed to look both professional and feminine. But it was the way she immediately focused on Emma, the way her expression softened with genuine concern, that struck him most. "Good morning," she said, her voice clear and warm. "I'm Miss Laura Hartley, the teacher here. You must be Emma." She knelt down to the girl's level, not seeming to care about the dust on her dress. "I've been hoping you would come to school. I need someone to help me organize the reading books, and I think you might be just the person for the job." Emma glanced up at Samuel uncertainly, and he nodded encouragement. "This is my Uncle Samuel," Emma said quietly. "He's raising me now because Mama died." Laura's eyes flickered with sympathy, but she didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, she said, "That must be very hard. But I'm glad you have your uncle, and I'm glad you're here. Would you like to see where you'll sit?" Emma nodded slowly, and Laura stood, holding out her hand. Emma took it, and Samuel watched as the teacher led his niece to a desk near the front, talking quietly about the other students and what they would learn today. After a moment, Laura returned to him, and he found himself acutely aware of his dusty clothes and calloused hands. "Mr. Xavier," she said, her voice low enough that Emma wouldn't hear, "I wanted to say that I knew your sister a little. She came to town sometimes with Emma. I was very sorry to hear of her passing." "Thank you, madam." Samuel cleared his throat. "I need to be honest with you. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't fix her hair right, and half the time I think I'm buttoning her dresses wrong. She needs things I don't know how to provide." Laura studied him for a long moment, and he had the uncomfortable feeling she was seeing right through him. "You brought her to school," she said finally. "That's a good start. Many men wouldn't think of it." "She needs proper learning," Samuel said. "And I thought maybe you could help with the other things, the girl things. I can pay you for your time if you're willing to show me what I need to know." Something shifted in Laura's expression, a mixture of surprise and something else he couldn't quite identify. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Xavier. Helping Emma is part of my responsibility as her teacher, but I appreciate that you recognize she needs more than you alone can provide." She paused, then added, "Why don't you come back at the end of the school day? I'll show you some basics about hair and such, and we can discuss what Emma might need." Relief flooded through him. "Thank you, madam. I'm grateful." He started to leave, then turned back. "Miss Hartley." "She hasn't cried yet. Not once since Margaret died. That's not natural, is it?" Laura's eyes softened. "Grief takes everyone differently, Mr. Xavier. Give her time and give her safety. The tears will come when she's ready." Samuel nodded and left, feeling both relieved and strangely reluctant to go. He had work waiting, cattle to check and fences to mend, but his mind kept returning to the image of Emma taking the teacher's hand, and the way Miss Hartley had knelt in the dust without hesitation. Laura watched Emma throughout the day, her heart aching for the quiet child who sat so still, as if afraid to take up too much space in the world. She had 14 other students ranging from 6 to 14 years old, and they required constant attention, but she found her gaze returning to the little girl again and again. At lunch, the other children ran outside to play, but Emma sat at her desk, carefully organizing papers exactly as Laura had shown her. "Emma," Laura said gently, "wouldn't you like to go play with the others?" Emma shook her head. "I'd rather help you if that's all right." Laura sat down in the desk next to her, making her decision. "That's fine with me, but first let's do something about your hair. Would you like that?" For the first time that day, something like hope flickered in Emma's eyes. "Yes, please." Laura retrieved a brush from her desk and carefully began working through the tangles, gentle and patient. Emma sat very still, and after a moment she said, "Mama used to brush my hair every morning. She'd tell me stories while she did it." "What kind of stories?" Laura asked, her hands steady and soothing. "About when she was little and about my papa before he died. She said he could make anything grow, that he had magic in his hands for growing things." Emma's voice wavered slightly. "Uncle Samuel is nice, but he's not like Papa or Mama. He doesn't know how to do things right." "I think your uncle is trying very hard," Laura said carefully. "It's not easy for a man alone to raise a child, but he brought you here and he asked for help. That takes courage." She finished brushing and began to braid, her fingers quick and sure. "Your uncle must love you very much to admit he needs help. Some people are too proud for that." "Do you think he wishes he didn't have to take care of me?" Emma asked, and the vulnerability in her voice nearly broke Laura's heart. "No," Laura said firmly. "I saw the way he looked at you this morning. That's not the look of a man who resents his responsibility. That's the look of a man who's afraid of failing someone he cares about." Emma was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "I miss my mama." "Of course you do," Laura said softly, securing the braid with a ribbon from her own hair. "You always will. But missing her doesn't mean you can't love your uncle too, and it doesn't mean you can't be happy again someday." When the school day ended, Samuel returned, looking nervous in a way that Laura suspected was unusual for him. He was a tall man, she noticed now, with dark hair starting to show gray at the temples and eyes the color of a summer sky. His face was weathered from years of outdoor work, and his hands bore the scars of hard labor. There was something solid about him, something dependable and strong. Emma ran to him immediately, and he caught her up in his arms, his relief at seeing her obvious. "Uncle Samuel, look." Miss Hartley fixed my hair. Emma touched the neat braid with pride. "It looks real pretty," Samuel said, and his eyes met Laura's over Emma's head. "Thank you." "Come inside," Laura said. "The other children have gone home. I'll show you how to do it yourself." They entered the empty schoolhouse, and Laura had Emma sit while she demonstrated the process of braiding, her voice clear and instructive. Samuel watched intently, his brow furrowed with concentration. "Now you try," Laura said. Samuel's large hands fumbled with Emma's fine hair, and Laura found herself standing close to guide him, her hands over his to show the proper movements. He smelled of leather and sage and honest work, and she was suddenly very aware of his presence. "Like this," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Over, under, pull gently. You don't want to hurt her." "I'd never hurt her," Samuel said, and there was something in his voice that made Laura look up into his face. He was closer than she'd realized, and for a moment their eyes met and held. Laura stepped back, flustered. "Yes, well, that's the basic idea. It will take practice." "I'm grateful for your time," Samuel said, his voice rougher than before, "and your patience." Over the next week, Samuel came to pick up Emma every day, and each time, Laura found herself watching for him, her heart beating faster when she saw his tall figure approaching. She told herself it was because she wanted to help Emma, to make sure the child was adjusting well. But she knew it was more than that. Emma was blooming under the attention and routine. She made friends with the other children, and her hollow look was slowly fading. Laura made a point of spending extra time with her, helping her catch up on lessons she had missed and simply listening when the girl needed to talk. One evening, Samuel arrived early, and Laura was still helping Emma with arithmetic. He stood in the doorway, watching them together, and when Laura looked up and saw his expression, something warm unfurled in her chest. "She's doing very well," Laura said, rising. "She's bright and eager to learn." "That's good to hear," Samuel said. He hesitated, then added, "Miss Hartley, I was wondering if you might come to dinner at the ranch this Saturday. Emma has been asking, and I'd like to thank you proper for all you've done." Laura knew she should say no. There was something happening between them, something that could complicate everything. But when she looked at Emma's hopeful face and then at Samuel's earnest expression, she found herself nodding. "I'd be happy to," she said. The ranch was beautiful in the late afternoon light, sprawling and wild and somehow peaceful all at once. Laura rode out in the wagon she borrowed from the minister's wife, her best dress carefully pressed, and her hair arranged with special care she refused to examine too closely. Samuel met her at the house, and she could see he had made an effort too. His shirt was clean, his hair combed back, and he looked both nervous and pleased to see her. "Welcome to our home," he said, helping her down from the wagon with a hand that lingered just a moment longer than necessary. Emma burst out of the house, wearing a clean dress and with her hair in a braid that, while not perfect, was clearly done by Samuel's own hands. "Miss Hartley, come see my room. Uncle Samuel built me a bookshelf." The house was simple but well built, with solid furniture and an air of masculine practicality. But Laura could see the attempts at making it suitable for a child. A rag doll sitting on the mantel, wildflowers in a jar on the table, a small rocking chair by the fireplace. Emma's room was tiny but cheerful, with a bed covered in a quilt that looked handmade and the promised bookshelf holding a few precious volumes. "Uncle Samuel went all the way to San Bernardino to buy me books," Emma said proudly. "He said every lady should have books of her own." Laura felt her throat tighten. San Bernardino was a 2-day ride each way. That was very thoughtful of him. Dinner was simple but good. Beef stew with fresh bread and dried apple pie for dessert. Samuel clearly wasn't a practiced cook, but he had put genuine effort into the meal. They ate at the kitchen table, and Emma chattered happily about school and her new friends, her earlier quiet sadness seeming like a distant memory. After dinner, Emma went to play with a set of carved wooden animals, and Samuel and Laura sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the grasslands. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the evening air was cooling after the heat of the day. "She's getting better," Samuel said quietly. "Because of you. Because of both of us," Laura corrected. "You've given her stability and love. That's what she needs most." "I never thought I'd be doing this," Samuel admitted. "Raising a child alone. I figured I'd get married someday, maybe have kids the normal way, but Margaret needed me and Emma needed me, so here we are." "Why haven't you married?" Laura asked, then blushed at her own boldness. "I'm sorry, that's too personal." "No, it's all right." Samuel was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the horizon. "I was engaged once when I was younger. Girl named Catherine. But she wanted a life in the city, wanted fancy things and society parties. I wanted this." He gestured at the land around them. "We realized we were too different, so we ended it. Since then, I've been focused on building the ranch. Never seemed like the right time to court anyone." "And now?" Laura asked softly. Samuel turned to look at her, and in the fading light his eyes were serious and intent. "Now I'm thinking I was a fool to wait so long." Laura's breath caught. "Mr. Xavier." "Samuel," he said. "Please call me Samuel." "Samuel," she repeated, and his name felt right on her lips. "I should tell you that I came to Calico specifically for the teaching position. I'm from Boston originally. My family wanted me to marry a businessman there, someone appropriate and settled. But I wanted to teach, to make a difference. So I came west, and my family was horrified." "Do you regret it?" Samuel asked. Laura thought of the children she taught, of Emma's growing smiles, of the vast sky and the freedom she felt here. Of the man sitting beside her, solid and honest and making her heart race in a way no Boston businessman ever had. "No," she said. "I don't regret it at all." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Samuel said, "Laura, I know this is fast and maybe it's not proper, but I need to be honest. I'm drawn to you. Have been since that first day. You're smart and kind in the way you are with Emma. I've never met anyone like you." Laura felt her heart pounding. "I feel it too," she admitted. "I keep telling myself to be sensible, but then you bring Emma to school and you try so hard with her hair and you ride 4 days to buy her books, and I can't help but." "Can't help but what?" Samuel prompted gently. "Can't help but care," Laura finished quietly. Samuel reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle around hers. "Then maybe we could see where this goes. Court proper with Emma as our chaperone and see if what we're feeling is real." "Yes," Laura said, squeezing his hand. "I'd like that very much." Over the following months, Samuel courted Laura with a determination that reminded her of why he had succeeded in building his ranch. He came to town every Sunday after church, and they would walk together while Emma played with other children. He brought her flowers from the grasslands, not fancy roses but wild blooms that smelled of sage and summer. He talked to her about his dreams for the ranch, about the cattle business and the challenges of the changing West, and he listened with genuine interest when she spoke about her teaching methods and her hopes for her students. Laura visited the ranch most Saturdays, and she and Emma grew closer. She taught the girl to sew and shared stories from her own childhood in Boston, carefully editing out the parts about privilege and society that seemed so meaningless now. Emma began to open up about her mother, sharing memories without the earlier pain, and one evening she cried in Laura's arms, finally releasing the grief she had been holding inside. "I'm afraid I'll forget her," Emma sobbed. "I'm afraid her face will fade away and I won't remember." Laura held her tight, stroking her hair. "You won't forget. Love doesn't fade like that, and it's all right to be happy again, Emma. Your mother would want that for you." Samuel had stood in the doorway, watching, and when Emma finally fell asleep, exhausted from crying, he had taken Laura's hand and said, "Thank you. I couldn't have helped her through that." "Yes, you could have," Laura said, "but I'm glad I was here." The town of Calico noticed their courtship, of course. In a community of barely 300 souls, everything was noticed and discussed. Some of the women thought Laura was moving too fast, that she should be more cautious. Others thought Samuel was lucky to have found such a refined woman. The general consensus was that they made a good pair, the rancher and the schoolteacher, and that little Emma needed a mother. In November, when the air turned crisp and the grasslands faded to gold, Samuel proposed. He did it simply, without fanfare, on the porch where they had first acknowledged their feelings. Emma was inside, practicing her letters, and the sun was setting in its usual glory. "Laura," Samuel said, taking both her hands in his, "these past months have been the happiest of my life. You've brought light and laughter into this house, and you've helped Emma heal in ways I never could alone. But more than that, you've made me realize what I've been missing. I love you. I love your strength and your kindness, your intelligence and your humor. I love the way you look at the world and the way you make me want to be better. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Emma's mother?" Laura felt tears streaming down her face, happy tears that blurred the sunset into a wash of color. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Samuel, I'll marry you." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, and she felt as if she had finally found home. Not in a place, but in a person, in this good man who had opened his heart and his life to her. Emma was ecstatic when they told her, throwing herself at Laura with such force they both nearly fell over. "You're going to be my mama?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. "If you want me to be," Laura said carefully. "I know I can never replace your mother, Emma, but I love you and I'd be honored to be your family." "I want you to be," Emma said fiercely. "I want it so much." They married in December, on a cold, clear day with the mountains visible in the distance. The ceremony was held in the small church in Calico, with half the town in attendance. Emma stood beside Laura as her maid of honor, wearing a new blue dress and beaming with pride. Samuel's ranch hands cleaned up and attended, grinning at their boss's obvious happiness. The minister, a kindly man named Reverend Thompson, spoke about the bonds of family and the courage it took to open one's heart to new love. He spoke about how a family wasn't always defined by blood, but by choice and commitment and love. Laura felt the words resonate deep in her soul. When Samuel slipped the simple gold band on her finger and spoke his vows, his voice was steady and sure. When she promised to love and honor him, to be his partner and Emma's mother, she meant every word with a fierceness that surprised her. At the reception in the town hall, there was music and dancing and more food than seemed possible for such a small community. Samuel danced with Laura, holding her close, and then he danced with Emma, swinging her around until she shrieked with laughter. "Are you happy?" Samuel asked Laura later, as they stood together watching Emma dance with one of the ranch hands who was being patient with her clumsy steps. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be," Laura said truthfully. "I came west to teach, to make a difference. I never expected to find this." "I'm grateful you did," Samuel said, pulling her close. "I'm grateful for all of it. Moving into the ranch house full-time was an adjustment. Laura continued teaching, which was unusual for a married woman, but Samuel supported her decision. "Those children need you," he said. "And you need them. I won't be the man who takes that away from you." They established a rhythm to their days. Laura would ride into town early, teach until afternoon, and return home to find Samuel working the ranch. They would have dinner together as a family, and Emma would show them her schoolwork while they praised her progress. Evenings were spent reading together, or playing games, or simply sitting on the porch talking while Emma played nearby. The ranch hands got used to having a woman around, and Laura surprised them by being interested in the workings of the ranch. She asked Samuel questions about the cattle business, about breeding and markets, and the challenges they faced. She kept careful books of their accounts, her neat handwriting replacing Samuel's rough scrawl, and she had a head for numbers that helped them make better business decisions. "You're a natural at this," Samuel told her one evening, looking over the books she had organized. "We should have partnered up years ago." "We found each other at the right time," Laura said, kissing his cheek. "Neither of us was ready before." The first time Emma called Laura Mama was in February, almost 2 months after the wedding. She did it without fanfare, simply asking, "Mama, can you help me with this arithmetic problem?" Then she froze, her eyes wide and worried. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean." Laura knelt down and pulled her close. "Don't be sorry. I'd be honored if you called me Mama, but only if you're comfortable with it." "I think my first mama would want me to," Emma said quietly. "I think she'd be happy you're taking care of me and Uncle Samuel." "I think she would too," Laura agreed, her heart full. Life was not without challenges. In March, a harsh late storm killed several head of cattle and money was tight for a while. Laura took on additional tutoring in town to help, teaching the merchant's children reading and arithmetic in the evenings. Samuel hated that she had to work extra, but she reminded him firmly that they were partners, and partners helped each other. "I'm not some delicate flower who needs protecting," she told him when he tried to argue. "I'm your wife, and this is my ranch too. Let me help." He had looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm still learning to share the burdens." "We both are," Laura said, softening. "It's all right to struggle with it. Just don't shut me out." In April, Samuel's former fiancée Catherine came through town with her wealthy husband, a railroad executive from San Francisco. She was expensively dressed and clearly trying to show off her fine life, and she made a point of visiting the schoolhouse to see how Samuel had ended up. "So you're the school teacher he married," Catherine said, looking Laura up and down with barely concealed disdain. "How quaint." "I suppose for someone like Samuel, this life is enough." Laura felt her temper rise, but she kept her voice calm and professional. "For someone like Samuel, you mean a good man who values hard work and family? Yes, this life is more than enough. It's everything." Catherine's smile was cold. "I'm sure you think so. But out here in this dusty nowhere town, playing at ranching and teaching children who will never amount to anything. It all seems rather small, doesn't it?" "No," Laura said firmly. "What seems small is measuring life only by wealth and status. Samuel has built something real and lasting. He's raising a child with love and dedication. He's respected in this community for his integrity and his work. That's not small. That's everything that matters." Catherine left in a huff, and when Laura told Samuel about the encounter that evening, he pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "Thank you for defending me," he said. "But you know I don't care what she thinks." "I know," Laura said, "but I do. I won't let anyone suggest you're less than the remarkable man you are." By summer, Emma had grown taller and more confident. She excelled at school and had a tight group of friends. The hollow sadness was gone entirely, replaced by the natural exuberance of a healthy child. She still talked about her birth mother sometimes, keeping those memories alive, but she also called Laura Mama without hesitation and clearly felt secure in her place in the family. One evening in July, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emma said, "I'm glad Mama died before I forgot how much I wanted a family." "That sounds bad, doesn't it?" "No," Laura said gently. "It sounds honest. You're allowed to be happy now, Emma. That doesn't dishonor your mother's memory. It honors it because she'd want you to be happy." "I think I'm the luckiest girl in California," Emma said seriously. "I have Uncle Samuel, and I have you, and I have this whole big ranch to live on. Some of the girls at school only have tiny houses in town." "We are lucky," Laura agreed. "All three of us." That night, after Emma was asleep, Samuel pulled Laura out onto the porch, his hands gentle on her waist. "I have something to tell you," he said, and there was excitement in his voice. "What is it?" Laura asked, smiling at his boyish enthusiasm. "I got word today that the railroad is coming through near Calico. There will be a station about 10 miles from here. That means we'll be able to ship cattle direct to San Francisco, cut out the middlemen. Laura, this could make the ranch really successful. We could expand, hire more hands, maybe even build a bigger house." "That's wonderful," Laura said, genuinely pleased for him. "It's wonderful for us," Samuel corrected. "You're part of this ranch now, part of everything I build, and there's something else I want to talk to you about." "What?" Laura asked. Samuel took her hands, his expression suddenly serious. "I know we haven't talked much about having children of our own. We've been so focused on Emma and on building our life together. But I want you to know that if you want more children, I'd be happy about that. And if you don't, if Emma is enough for you, that's all right too. I just want to know what you're thinking." Laura felt her heart swell. In Boston, men never asked their wives such questions. Children were expected, assumed, not discussed. The fact that Samuel was checking with her, considering her feelings, made her love him even more. "I think I'd like more children," she said carefully. "Not right away, perhaps. I want to enjoy Emma at this age, and I want to keep teaching for a while longer. But someday, yes." "I'd like to have your children, Samuel." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and she melted into his arms. "Someday," he agreed. "There's no rush. We have all the time in the world." The railroad's arrival brought changes to Calico. The town grew as workers flooded in to build the station and lay tracks. New businesses opened, and the population swelled to nearly 800. Samuel's prediction about the cattle business proved accurate, and the ranch prospered. He hired 2 more hands and expanded the herd. Laura found herself busier than ever, with more students enrolling in school. The town council wanted to build a larger schoolhouse, and they asked her to help plan it. She threw herself into the project, designing a building that would accommodate 30 students comfortably, with proper windows for light and a separate room for a small library. Through it all, they made sure to keep Emma at the center of their attention. It would have been easy to let work consume them, but they had both learned the importance of family. They had a standing rule that Sunday was always family day, no work allowed. They would go on picnics, or ride out to explore the canyons, or simply stay home and read together. In September, almost a year after their wedding, Laura realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but she waited to be certain before telling Samuel. When she finally did, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. "Really?" he asked, his face splitting into a huge grin. "We're having a baby." "Yes," Laura confirmed, laughing at his joy. "Probably sometime in April, if my calculations are right." Samuel picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down with a look of panic. "I shouldn't do that, should I? Are you all right? Do you need to sit down?" "Samuel, I'm pregnant, not fragile," Laura said, still laughing. But yes, maybe no more spinning for a while. Emma was equally excited when they told her. "I'm going to be a big sister," she asked, her eyes wide. "Really and truly, really and truly," Laura confirmed. "What do you think about that?" "I think it's the best thing ever," Emma said, throwing her arms around Laura's waist. "I'm going to teach the baby everything I know." The pregnancy was relatively easy, though Laura got tired more easily as the months progressed. She continued teaching through December, then reluctantly turned her classroom over to a temporary teacher who came from San Bernardino. Samuel fussed over her constantly, worried about every little thing, until Laura finally had to sit him down and remind him that women had been having babies since the beginning of time. "I know," he said, looking sheepish, "but it's different when it's you. What if something goes wrong?" "What if I lose you?" Laura softened, understanding his fear. He had already lost his sister to illness. The thought of losing her too must be terrifying. "You're not going to lose me," she said firmly. "I'm strong, and Doc Henderson says everything looks good. But I need you to trust me, and to trust that everything will be all right." Emma was a constant source of help and entertainment during Laura's pregnancy. She would read to Laura in the evenings, bringing books from the school library and carefully sounding out difficult words. She would help with simple cooking tasks, proud to be useful. And she would talk to Laura's growing belly, telling the baby stories and promising to be the best big sister in all of California. "You think it's a boy or a girl?" Emma asked one evening in March, her hand on Laura's stomach. "I don't know," Laura said. "What do you hope for?" Emma considered this seriously. "I think a boy would be nice. Then we'd have both a girl and a boy, and Uncle Samuel would probably like a boy, someone to teach ranching to." "Your uncle would love any baby we have," Laura said. "But you might be right about a boy." As it turned out, Emma was right. In early April, on a warm afternoon with wildflowers blooming across the grasslands, Laura gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Samuel's fear seemed justified, but Doc Henderson was skilled and Laura was determined. When the baby's first cry filled the bedroom, Samuel's knees nearly buckled with relief. "You have a son," Doc Henderson said, handing the squalling infant to Laura. Samuel looked at his son with an expression of awe and terror. "He's so small," he whispered. "He won't be for long," Laura said, exhausted but happy. "Look, he has your eyes." Emma was allowed in shortly after, and she stared at her new brother with wonder. "He's perfect," she breathed. "What are we going to name him?" Laura and Samuel exchanged glances. They had discussed names but hadn't decided for certain. "What do you think about James?" Samuel asked. "That was my father's name." "James Samuel Xavier," Laura said, trying it out. "I like it." "What do you think, Emma?" "I think it's perfect," Emma said. She reached out a careful finger to touch the baby's tiny hand, and his fingers curled around hers reflexively. "Hello, James. I'm your big sister, and I'm going to take very good care of you." The next few months were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. James was a demanding baby, wanting to eat constantly and rarely sleeping more than a few hours at a time. Laura was grateful for Emma's help, for Samuel's willingness to walk the floor with a crying baby at 2 in the morning, and for the support of the other ranch wives who brought food and advice. "I don't know how you did this alone," Laura said to Samuel one particularly difficult night when James had been crying for hours and nothing seemed to help. "I didn't," Samuel reminded her. "I had you, and Emma didn't cry nearly this much. I think James takes after me, stubborn and determined to make his presence known." Despite the exhaustion, Laura had never been happier. Her family was complete, her life was full, and she was exactly where she was meant to be. She watched Samuel teaching Emma to rope a calf while James slept in a sling against her chest, and she marveled at how much her life had changed in just 2 years. By the time James was 6 months old, things had settled into a manageable routine. Laura returned to teaching part-time, with a local woman named Mrs. Chen watching James during school hours. Samuel's ranch continued to prosper, and they began planning the new house he had promised, one with enough room for their growing family, and with a proper study where Laura could prepare lessons and keep school records. Emma, now 8 years old, was thriving. She was at the top of her class, not because Laura was her mother, but because she was genuinely bright and hardworking. She had friends throughout the town, and she had taken to ranch life with enthusiasm, learning to ride and help with the animals. One evening in October, as they sat on the porch of their new house watching the sunset, Samuel said, "Do you ever think about Boston? About the life you left behind?" Laura considered the question seriously. She thought about the elegant brownstone where she had grown up, about the society parties and the proper rules of behavior. She thought about what her life would have been if she had stayed and married the businessman her parents had chosen. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but not with regret." "That life wasn't real, Samuel. It was all performance and pretense. This is real. You, Emma, James, the work we do, the life we've built together. This matters in a way that life never did." "I'm glad," Samuel said, taking her hand, "because I can't imagine my life without you now." "You saved me, Laura. You saved both of us, Emma and me. We were just surviving before you came. Now we're living." "You saved me too," Laura said softly. "You gave me purpose and family and love. You let me be myself, all of myself, the teacher and the wife and the mother." Not every man would do that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Emma's laughter drifting from inside where she was playing with James. Finally, Samuel said, "I've been thinking about the future. About what we want to build here, not just for us but for Emma and James and maybe more children if we're blessed with them." "What are you thinking?" Laura asked. "I want to make this ranch a real legacy," Samuel said. "Something they can build on when we're gone. And I want to make sure they understand the importance of education and hard work. Emma is already learning both. I want the same for James." "We'll make sure of it," Laura promised. "Together." The years passed in a blur of activity and growth. James grew from a demanding baby into a curious toddler and then an energetic little boy. Emma blossomed into a confident young lady, still excelling at school and now helping Laura teach the younger children. The ranch continued to prosper, and Samuel gained a reputation as one of the best cattlemen in the region. In 1883, when James was 3 and Emma was 11, Laura discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news was met with excitement rather than worry. They had done this before and knew what to expect. The pregnancy was easier than the first, and in December, Laura gave birth to a healthy baby girl they named Alice. Emma was enchanted with her baby sister, doting on her constantly. James was less impressed, declaring babies boring, but he warmed up when Alice started smiling at him. Samuel was completely smitten, calling Alice his little princess and building her an elaborate cradle with his own hands. "Now we really are complete," Laura said, holding Alice while watching Samuel play with James and Emma outside. "This is everything I ever wanted, even when I didn't know I wanted it." The new schoolhouse was completed in 1884, and Laura was instrumental in organizing its opening. The building was everything they had planned, with space for 40 students, a proper library, and even a small apartment where the teacher could live. Laura continued to teach, though she reduced her hours to spend more time with Alice and James. The town of Calico continued to grow, now boasting a population of over 1,000. The railroad brought prosperity and progress, and new families arrived regularly. Samuel's ranch was now one of the largest in the area, employing 8 full-time hands and running a herd of over 1,000 cattle. Through it all, they never forgot what mattered most: family. Sunday remained sacred, devoted to being together. They would pack picnics and ride out to their favorite spots, or they would stay home and read together, or they would attend church and then spend the afternoon with neighbors and friends. Emma grew into a beautiful and intelligent young woman, graduating from Laura's school at 13 and expressing interest in becoming a teacher herself. James was a whirlwind of energy and mischief, always getting into things but with such charm that it was hard to stay angry with him. Alice was sweet and gentle, content to sit with her books or help her mother in the garden. In 1887, when Emma was 15, a young man named Thomas Garrett came to work as one of Samuel's ranch hands. He was 19, hardworking and respectful, and it didn't escape anyone's notice that he and Emma were soon finding excuses to talk to each other. "I'm not ready for this," Samuel said to Laura one evening, watching Thomas help Emma with her horse. "She's too young to be interested in boys." "She's 15, Laura reminded him gently. "That's not too young to notice a nice young man, and Thomas is respectful. He hasn't done anything inappropriate." "He better not," Samuel muttered, and Laura had to hide her smile. "You're going to have to let her grow up eventually," she said. "She's not your little girl anymore. She's becoming a woman." "I know," Samuel sighed. "I just wish it wouldn't happen so fast." Laura understood his feelings. It seemed like only yesterday that Emma had been a sad 6-year-old with tangled hair, and now she was nearly grown, with her own dreams and interests. Time moved relentlessly forward, whether they were ready or not. By 1889, life had settled into a comfortable pattern. The ranch was thriving, the children were healthy and happy, and Laura and Samuel's love had only deepened with time. They still made each other laugh, still talked for hours about everything and nothing, still looked at each other with the same affection and desire they had felt in those early days of courtship. Emma was now 17 and had started teaching at the schoolhouse part-time, working with the youngest children while Laura focused on the older students. She and Thomas Garrett were officially courting, and while Samuel still wasn't entirely comfortable with it, he had to admit that Thomas was a good man who treated Emma with the respect she deserved. James, at 9, was already showing signs of being a natural rancher. He loved working with the cattle and could ride better than some of the adult hands. He followed Samuel everywhere, soaking up knowledge about the business and the land. Alice, at 6, was quieter but no less determined. She loved books and learning, and she had a gentle way with animals that reminded Laura of Margaret, the sister Samuel had lost so long ago. One Sunday in the fall, the whole family rode out to the canyon that had become their favorite spot. They spread out a picnic lunch and sat together under the vast California sky, talking and laughing and simply being together. "You remember when we first came here?" Emma asked Samuel. "I was so little and so sad. I thought I'd never be happy again." "I remember," Samuel said quietly. "I was terrified I was going to fail you." "You didn't fail me," Emma said firmly. "You gave me everything I needed, you and Mama both." She smiled at Laura, and Laura felt her eyes sting with happy tears. "We're proud of you," Laura said, "of the woman you've become." "I learned from the best," Emma said. "You taught me to be strong and kind, to value education and hard work. And Uncle Samuel, you taught me what a good man looks like. That's how I know Thomas is the right one." Samuel cleared his throat, looking suspiciously emotional. "You really think he's the right one?" "I do," Emma said. "I know I'm young and we're not rushing into anything. But yes, I think he's the man I want to marry someday." "Then I suppose I should start getting used to the idea," Samuel said, and he managed a smile despite the tears in his eyes. Later, as they rode home, James and Alice racing ahead on their ponies and Emma following at a more sedate pace, Samuel said to Laura, "How did we get so lucky?" "I ask myself that every day," Laura said. "We took a chance on each other, on love and family, and look what we built." "I love you," Samuel said, and after more than 10 years of marriage, those words still made Laura's heart race. "I love you too," she said, "always and forever." The years continued to unfold with their mixture of joy and challenge. In 1891, Emma married Thomas Garrett in a beautiful ceremony at the church in Calico. She was 19, glowing with happiness, and Thomas looked at her like she hung the moon. Samuel walked her down the aisle with tears streaming down his face, and when he placed her hand in Thomas's, he said quietly, "You take care of her. She's precious to us." "I will, sir," Thomas promised. "I'll love her and honor her all my days." They built a small house on the edge of Samuel's property, and Thomas continued working the ranch while Emma taught school. It was a good arrangement, keeping the family close while allowing the young couple their independence. James, now 11, took the wedding as an opportunity to declare that he was never getting married because girls were too complicated. Alice, 8 years old and pragmatic, informed him that he would probably change his mind eventually. Laura and Samuel exchanged amused glances, remembering their own youth and how impossible love had seemed until it wasn't. In 1893, Emma gave birth to Samuel and Laura's first grandchild, a baby girl named Margaret, after Emma's birth mother. Samuel held his granddaughter with shaking hands, overcome with emotion at this continuation of their family legacy. "Your grandma Margaret never got to see you grow up, Emma," he said, his voice thick. "But she'd be so proud of the woman you became, and so happy to know you named your daughter after her." Emma kissed her uncle's cheek. "She'll know her grandmother's story," she promised. "And she'll know how you saved me, how you and Mama Laura made me part of this beautiful family." Life continued its forward momentum. James grew into a strapping young man, taking on more and more responsibility at the ranch. At 16, he was already managing cattle drives and negotiating sales, showing a natural aptitude for business that made Samuel proud. Alice, at 13, was the top student in Laura's school and was talking about going to a teaching college in San Francisco when she was old enough. Samuel was now 51, his hair fully gray but his body still strong from years of ranch work. Laura was 43, with laugh lines around her eyes and a few silver threads in her auburn hair. They had weathered storms and droughts, economic downturns and personal losses, and through it all, their love had remained constant. One evening in 1895, as they sat on the porch of the house they had built together, Samuel said, "Do you remember that first day you came here, when I asked you to teach me how to braid Emma's hair?" "Of course I remember," Laura said, smiling. "I thought you were the most desperately earnest man I'd ever met. You were so worried about failing her." "I was terrified," Samuel admitted. "But then you helped us and you kept helping us, and somehow along the way I fell completely in love with you." "Somehow," Laura teased. "There was no somehow about it. You courted me quite deliberately, Samuel Xavier." "That I did," he agreed, grinning. "And it was the smartest thing I ever did. You made everything better, Laura, not just for Emma but for me too. You made me a better man." "We made each other better," Laura said, taking his hand. "That's what love does when it's real." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over land they had worked together, land they would pass on to their children. Inside, they could hear James and Alice arguing cheerfully about something, and in the small house across the way, Emma was likely putting baby Margaret to bed. No regrets, Samuel asked, as he had asked so many times over the years. "Not a single one," Laura said, as she always answered. "This life, this family, this love, it's everything. It's more than everything." In 1897, James, now 17, started courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a sensible girl named Catherine Steele. Samuel and Laura approved, pleased to see their son choosing someone with similar values and a love for ranch life. Alice, now 15, had decided definitively that she wanted to be a teacher, and she spent her free time helping Laura in the schoolhouse, learning the craft from her mother. Emma and Thomas had welcomed a son, Samuel Thomas Garrett, making Samuel and Laura grandparents twice over. The extended family gathered every Sunday, now including Emma's household, for dinner and fellowship. The house that had once held just Samuel and Emma, lonely and uncertain, now rang with laughter and conversation and the sound of children playing. The ranch had grown to 3,000 acres, one of the largest in the region. Samuel had taken on a partner to help manage it, allowing him more time with his family. He and Laura both knew that time was precious, that life could change in an instant, and they were determined to enjoy every moment they had together. One evening in early spring of 1898, Laura and Samuel took a walk alone, something they tried to do regularly despite their busy lives. They walked hand in hand through the grasslands, now dotted with wildflowers, and talked about everything and nothing. 20 years, Laura said suddenly. "We've been married almost 20 years. How is that possible?" "Time moves fast when you're happy," Samuel said. "Though there are moments I swear we were just getting married yesterday, and you were just arriving at the schoolhouse with Emma for the first time." "We've built something remarkable," Laura said, looking out over the land. "Not just the ranch, but the family. Emma is happy and settled with her own family. James is finding his way, growing into a fine man. Alice is pursuing her dreams. We've done well, Samuel." "We have," he agreed. "And we did it together. I never could have done any of this without you, Laura. You're my partner in everything, and I'm grateful for you every single day." Laura stopped walking and turned to face him. Even after 20 years, he could still make her heart flutter. "I love you, Samuel Xavier. I loved you when we were courting, I loved you when we married, and I love you more now than I thought possible." "I love you too," Samuel said, pulling her close. "My Laura, my wife, my everything." They kissed there in the grasslands, surrounded by wildflowers and endless sky. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life of meaning and purpose and deep, abiding love. In the years that followed, their family continued to grow and flourish. James married Catherine Steele in 1899, and they built a house on another corner of the ranch property. Alice left for teaching college in 1901, writing long letters home about her studies and her plans. Emma and Thomas welcomed a third child, and then a fourth, filling their home with noise and activity. Samuel and Laura aged gracefully, their love deepening with each passing year. They watched their grandchildren grow, teaching them about the land and the importance of family. They continued to work together, Samuel managing the ranch with James's help and Laura teaching until her mid-50s, when she finally decided to retire and focus on writing a history of calico for future generations. In 1910, when Samuel was 64 and Laura was 57, they celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary with a huge party attended by seemingly everyone in calico. Emma spoke at the celebration, her voice thick with emotion. "I was 6 years old when my uncle became my guardian," she said. "I was lost and grieving, and he was terrified and uncertain, but he loved me enough to ask for help, and Laura loved us both enough to give it. She came into our lives as a teacher, but she became so much more." She became my mother, Samuel's wife, and the foundation of this family we've all been blessed to be part of. Their love story isn't just theirs. It's all of ours because it created the family we all belong to. Laura cried through the whole speech, and Samuel held her hand, his own eyes wet. They had built something lasting, something good, and surrounded by their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they could see the fruits of their love spreading outward like ripples in water. As the party wound down and the guests departed, Samuel and Laura found themselves alone on the porch once again, the place where so much of their love story had unfolded. The stars were bright overhead, the air was warm with the promise of summer, and they sat together in the comfortable silence of two people who knew each other completely. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Samuel asked suddenly. "When I told you I didn't know what I was doing." "I said bringing Emma to school was a good start," Laura remembered, "and that many men wouldn't think of it." "You saw me," Samuel said quietly. "You saw past the rough exterior and the uncertainty, and you saw that I was trying. That meant everything." "I saw a good man who loved his niece and wanted to do right by her," Laura said. "How could I not love that man?" "How indeed," Samuel said, smiling. He squeezed her hand gently. "We've had a good run, haven't we?" "The best," Laura agreed. "And we're not done yet. We have years ahead of us still, God willing. Years to watch our grandchildren grow, to see what James and Alice build with their lives, to continue working together and loving each other." "Then let's make them count," Samuel said. "Every single one," and they did. They spent their remaining years exactly as they had spent the previous ones, together, in love, committed to their family and their land and each other. Samuel lived to see his 72nd birthday, passing peacefully in his sleep in 1918 with Laura beside him. She mourned him deeply, but found comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the legacy they had built together. Laura lived another 10 years, dying at the age of 75, surrounded by the family she and Samuel had created. In those final moments, she thought of that first day in the schoolhouse, when a desperate rancher had brought his grieving niece for help. She thought of how scared they had all been, how uncertain of the future. But they had chosen love over fear, partnership over isolation, and family over everything else. And in the end, that had made all the difference. Their love story had started with a simple request for help with a little girl's hair, but it had grown into something magnificent and lasting, a legacy that would continue for generations. Emma was there at the end, holding her mother's hand just as Laura had once held hers. "Thank you," Emma whispered, "for everything, for saving us, for loving us, for being exactly who we needed when we needed it most." Laura smiled, her eyes closing for the last time. "Thank you," she whispered back, "for letting me be part of this family. It was the greatest gift of my life." And in the generations that followed, the story was told and retold, of the rancher who was raising his niece alone, of the schoolteacher who stepped in to help, and of how together they built a family that spanned decades and touched countless lives. It was a story of love and courage, of second chances and new beginnings, of how the bravest thing anyone can do is admit they need help, and the most powerful thing anyone can offer is to give it. The ranch remained in the family, passed down through James's line, and the schoolhouse in Calico bore a plaque honoring Laura Hartley Xavier, who taught there for 30 years and inspired generations of students. Emma's children and grandchildren carried forward both Samuel and Margaret's legacy, ensuring that the family tree that had nearly died with one small grieving girl instead flourished and grew strong. On clear evenings, when the sky turned orange and pink over the California grasslands, it wasn't hard to imagine Samuel and Laura sitting on their porch, hands intertwined, watching the sunset together. Their love had been simple and profound, built on everyday moments and steadfast commitment. They had taken broken pieces, a grieving child, a desperate man, a woman seeking purpose, and forged them into something whole and beautiful and lasting. It was a love story for the ages, set against the backdrop of the Wild West, proving that the greatest adventures aren't always about taming the frontier, but about opening your heart to let someone in. And in the end, that courage, that willingness to love and be loved, was what truly made a family.